Hello and welcome to Access Asia here on France 24. I'm Will Hildebrandt. Coming up, unwanted and deported, as the EU can now send back an unlimited number of Afghan asylum seekers. We take a closer look at their lives in their homeland after the dreams of living in Europe were dashed. Concerned that Indonesia's pursuit of reliable electricity will pull the plug on one of the world's rarest animals. A new dam threatens the habitat of the Tapanuli orangutan, of which there are only 800 living in the world. And gallivanting in the Gobi Desert, tours in China are on the rise for their beautiful landscapes, but is it really a chance to get away from the crowds? There is concern that the EU is returning asylum seekers to the very instability they fled in the first place. In early October, the bloc reached a deal with the Afghan government to deport an unlimited number of the country's asylum seekers. This, while international rankings annually list Afghanistan as the most dangerous and violent country in the world. Nick Rushworth has more.
Afghanistan has been at war for 40 years. After the Russians and the Taliban, the new enemy is the so-called Islamic State group. Faisal, now 21, pursued his dream of leaving the violence at home to go to France to study.
I left illegally for Europe, putting my life in danger. It's extremely dangerous here. I tried to get the right paperwork, but Afghanistan is corrupt. Everything has its price. A student visa is $20,000 to $25,000.
His family did not have that money, so he set off on foot and without papers, going through Iran, then Turkey, and into Europe, eventually reaching Paris 8 months later, at a cost of $11,000. He felt that being in the French capital, that his dream was becoming reality. He sent photos back home and hoped to get into a Paris university. But his asylum request was rejected after a few months. He saw the return home as failure. He'd studied at the French lycée in Kabul and was a model student. In Paris, he sometimes had to sleep rough.
I wasted my time. I spent nights hidden in woods without anything to eat, without water. I gave a lot of money to smugglers. It was all wasted. All I wanted was to study in France. It's so difficult to accept I can't do that.
In agreeing to return, Faisal was given a stipend of €3,400. He's invested in a small business. His father, however, wants more for his son.
I want him to learn new things, to build a good future for himself.
France has returned more than 500 asylum seekers to Afghanistan every year since 2015. The European Union has signed an agreement with Kabul for the gradual return of 80,000 Afghans. A return to a country that is regularly hit by terrorist attacks. 8,000 civilians have been killed by the Taliban and Islamic State in 2018. Another returnee only agreed to speak anonymously, fearing for his safety. He is 22 and left Afghanistan with his family to live in Turkey when he was a child. He tried to get to Europe when he was 17 and spent 4 years in Austria, surviving off money doing casual work, till he was deported against his will.
I felt so terrified when the plane landed in Kabul. This country has nothing to do with my life. It's like I'm discovering it. I don't know anyone here. I don't know how things work here. I'm afraid because the Taliban sees me as a traitor who went to work abroad, to work with people they call infidels. The Taliban wants to kill us, like they kill soldiers or the national police.
He wants to go to his family in Turkey but has almost no money. One returnee killed himself in the hotel he's staying in just 2 months ago. Migrants expelled by force are not financially supported or protected. The Taliban has issued a threat to kill those returning. 4 returnees have been killed.
Indonesia's billion-dollar dam project is threatening the habitat of the world's rarest orangutan. There are only around 800 of the recently discovered species left in the world. Officials say the project, backed by China, will improve electricity supply, but conservationists worry the environmental risks are too high. Claire Rush has more.
The Batang Toru rainforest on the Indonesian island of Sumatra is home to the Tapanuli orangutan. The species, only identified by scientists in 2017, is one of the rarest in the world, with some 800 estimated to be living in the wild. It's also one of the most endangered. Currently, one of its biggest threats is the construction of a dam, cutting right through the orangutan's habitat.
The roads they are constructing will divide the habitat, so the orangutans won't be able to interact. The dam would prevent normal reproduction and would lead to the orangutans mating with individuals that are blood-related, which will accelerate extinction.
The $1.6 billion project is a joint venture with the Chinese state-owned company Sinohydro. The dam is part of Beijing's larger initiative to invest billions of dollars in infrastructure in countries along the Old Silk Road. Jakarta says the 510-megawatt dam would boost electricity supply in Sumatra, parts of which are often subject to blackouts. But some environmentalists disagree.
There is currently a 15% electricity surplus in North Sumatra, so we cannot justify an additional power plant, in this case the Batang Toru hydroelectric dam, because it will have a negative impact on the environment and the community.
Local residents have opposed the project for encroaching on their land, according to media reports. But some critics say the concern goes far beyond the Batang Toru rainforest. China's Belt and Road Initiative, which seeks to link Asia, Europe, and Africa through infrastructure, has raised environmental concerns around the world. According to the World Wildlife Foundation, Beijing's initiative will directly impact over 260 species and nearly 50 biodiversity hotspots.
Japan Shinzo Abe made his first formal bilateral summit with Chinese leaders in 7 years. He met with Chinese Premier Li Keqiang in Beijing. That, as the two countries marked 40 years of the Sino-Japan Treaty of Peace and Friendship. China, the world's second largest economy, and Japan, the third biggest, want to boost cooperation and trust.
Japan and China shoulder great responsibility for maintaining peace and stability in the region. We've agreed that there is a need to continue to work together closely to achieve the common goal of the two countries, the denuclearization of North Korea.
In the world's most populated country, tourism is booming in one of China's most isolated areas, the Gobi Desert. From road trip to hiking, camping, and riding camels, visitors trek along the Silk Road in tours that are catered for adventure lovers. Alexander Arcot takes a closer look at the lure behind the rolling dunes.
In the immensity of the Gobi Desert, this oasis appears like a mirage. Dunhuang, a major stop on the ancient Silk Road, has hosted caravans for centuries, but this has now been taken to a new level. Today, it's hordes of tourists who are flocking to the desert to experience riding a camel. During the high season, this site receives at least 30,000 visitors every day.
It's not a worry to have so many people. Even if it is tiring, this is how we make a living.
More than 1,000 camels and just as many tourists, treading in each other's footsteps on the 4-kilometer trail.
This is a relaxing place. I'd rather follow the traffic this way than in a car.
It beats pollution in Beijing.
There are few complaints. In a country of 1.3 billion people, many of them prefer being in large crowds.
You know, in China, we've got very little holiday, and no matter where you go, there are always lots of people.
I feel like I'm in a fairy tale and my girlfriend is a princess in the Arabian Nights.
But the reality is a lot different from the fairy tale. It's not only because of the vast crowds. Added into the mix are quad bikes as well as gliders, brought in by the authorities to attract the mostly Chinese tourists. There are even 6 helicopters that cost €89 for a flight of barely 5 minutes. And for those who don't have such deep pockets, sand sledging is another option. That costs just €3. Dunhuang is open to the public year-round, but most visitors arrive during a 3-month period, as for much of the rest of the time the area is covered by snow. In recent years, Chinese tourists have been increasingly heading overseas for their holidays, but with sites like this, the government is hoping to keep them spending at home.
Japan's Princess Ayako chose to let go of her royal status, leaving the imperial family to marry a commoner. The youngest daughter of Emperor Akihito's late cousin wed Kei Moriya at the Meiji Shrine in Tokyo. About 30 people attended the ceremony, and with the departures of Princess Ayako, but also 4 years earlier, her older sister, the number of imperial family members falls to 18, with 13 of them being female. The small size has raised concerns about the stability of succession. And finally, a new exhibition takes some of the most ordinary and cheapest goldfish one can find and turns them into works of art. This in Shanghai, the latest of more than 30 cities to host a wandering art aquarium. Japanese artist Hirotomo Kimura combined 100 fish bowls and LED lights to celebrate the humble goldfish. More than 9 million people around the world have already visited the exhibition. Well, thanks for watching. We'll leave you with these images. Please stay tuned to France 24.
I'm Sarah Morris and I'm France 24's correspondent in Madrid. I'll bring you the latest news on Spain and Portugal, two countries battling to leave behind years of austerity. Join me live and check out my reports on France 24 and France24.com.
Sarah Morris, one of the 160 France 24 correspondents around the world.